Hey everyone, if you are anything like me, you may suffer from some travel-related anxiety. Before I travel, and especially before I travel to a foreign country, I always do quite a lot of research on what to expect. Part of this is just to calm my nerves, but a lot of it is honestly so I can go through the motions of my day-to-day itinerary with as few surprises as possible. A big part of this for me is transit. I do live in the Metro Washington, D.C. area, so we do have public transit. I'm very used to taking it, but all public transit systems have their little quirks. And finding out all the information I wanted about the Paris transit system ahead of time was challenging. So I did spend a lot of time researching and it absolutely did help, but of course there were some things that I just had to learn by going through it. I'm by no means an expert on the Paris metro system. I'm here to share my experience with you, and hopefully if you have some travel-related anxiety in terms of taking the metro in Paris, this will help you out. And worth noting, I'm mostly going to be focusing on that underground Paris metro system, not so much on buses or other forms of public transit. First things first, compared to most public transit in America, the public transit in Paris is wonderful. You really have nothing to worry about. It's going to serve you very well. That being said, it serves a lot of people very well. There are crowds, it just is very crowded. That kind of is what it is. However, I was really delighted to find out that a vast majority of the trains really only had 2 to 3 minute headways. Now, the 2 or 3 minute headway seems to be out of demand, meaning that sure, if you see a very crowded train and decide to pass on it because another one's coming in 2 minutes, that one probably is also pretty full. So, just get on the train. I didn't really use buses to get around the city, but of course I saw them going by. Those also seemed equally full at most times. The longest headway I saw for a train while I was there was about 7 minutes. And then for the commuter train, the RER, it was about 10 or 11 minutes. But overall, certainly at least compared to my experience in America, the trains are very reliable and come regularly. The transit map is broken up into 5 zones. So zone 1 is probably what you think of as Paris. That's the Louvre, the Orsay Museum, the Eiffel Tower, all that kind of stuff. And even some of the stuff more on the fringes in the suburbs are probably contained within the first 3 zones. Going out to zone 5 is things like Disneyland Paris, Versailles, both of the airports. The zones on the transit maps aren't the most obvious in my opinion. There's no big numbers that tell you this is zone 1, this is zone 2, etc. But they are delineated by these concentric squares. So there's the white square in the middle, zone 1, and then you move out to this light gray square, that's zone 2. Then the next square is white, that's zone 3, etc. I mention this because this is going to affect your fares. Depending on your plans, you may purchase single-use metro tickets every time you choose to ride. At the time of recording, these are about €2 per trip. And I believe, generally speaking, these are good to stay within a zone. For most people, that probably means these are good from your zone 1 location to another zone 1 location. Instead of single-use tickets, though, you have a bunch of other options. For example, you can buy a daily pass. This will range in price depending on how many zones you want it to cover. So if you're going to stay within one zone, it can be quite economical at around €9. If you want it to cover all 5 zones, it's closer to €20. This all depends on your itinerary. I would say for most people, just within the one zone or definitely within zones 1 to 3 is probably okay. If you're going to be in Paris for a while, though, you may consider a weekly pass. This is what I did when I was in Paris. Interestingly, weekly passes are not good from a week from the date of purchase. This was true at least when I was there. They were only good from Monday through Sunday. It didn't matter what day you bought them. This worked out fine for my trip because I arrived on a Tuesday morning, so I got basically the full week's use out of it. Again, the price depends on how many zones you want it to cover. I chose all of the zones 1 through 5. That then covered my trip from Charles de Gaulle Airport into the city on my arrival day. Then my last day in Paris also, I went from Paris out to Disneyland Paris in zone 5. I did that trek out to Disneyland Paris on a Sunday, so the weekly pass covered that as well. Given my itinerary in Paris, how much I was planning on doing, and bouncing around taking the metro to get between places, the weekly pass made a ton of sense for me and definitely saved a lot of money compared to individual tickets or even daily passes. There's also a Paris Visit Pass that you can buy for 1, 2, 3, or 5 days, and again, it can cover different numbers of zones. Specifically, you can buy one for zones 1 through 3, which again will cover probably most of your trips, or all the zones 1 through 5. The prices on this are super variable, of course, because it does depend on the length of days and the number of zones you want to cover. And naturally, all these prices are subject to change. I will leave helpful links in the description below for you to reference. Getting specifically into my experience buying that weekly pass. From some online research, we gathered that we would have to buy it in person once we arrived in Paris from a Navigo service counter, not from an automated ticket machine. You get a plastic card as your pass. It's essentially the size of a credit card, and then they affix a photo of you to it to prove that that pass is yours. That way you can't just be handing it off to friends and, everyone's using the same pass all the time. That also means you have to have a photo to affix to it. We did this at the service counter connected to Charles de Gaulle Airport. That way we could have our weekly pass and start using it right away. There are photo booths in the same general area as that Navigo service counter, but they are very slow. The lines get very long. So if you have a spare passport photo or some other small photo that they can affix to something that is credit card size, I would highly suggest you just pack that with you and bring it. It's going to save you a lot of time and headache. That being said, do prepare to wait in line for the Navigo service counter. It's definitely not as fast as going to an automated machine. But if you don't also have to wait in line to get a photo, that's going to save you some headache, definitely. Once you have your transit fare, whether that's a one-way ticket or a pass, then how are you going to get around? Google Maps is actually really great, generally speaking, but I also really liked using the Bonjour RATP app. I would highly suggest you download this app before you get to Paris. Finding the train station from the airport is easy. There's really big signage everywhere, but once you're actually in the city, it might be slightly more difficult. They are all marked on the outside in some fashion or another, but the stylization does vary. Most frequently, I would see two types of signs. One was red and kind of old school stylized, and one was yellow with a big M that was very modern looking. Once you're in the station itself, be prepared that they are fairly inaccessible. There are a lot of stairs, and not that many stations have escalators or elevators. Once you are in the station, there's usually maps on the walls that denote the various entrances and exits for that station, at least for the larger ones. And then on those maps, if the escalators or elevators exist, there will be symbols marking where they are. So there were occasions where we were just super tired and didn't want to walk up a ton of stairs, so we went to an exit that specifically said it had an escalator. But more importantly, if you or someone in your travel party is not particularly mobile, there's not really a good way around it. Using the Paris Metro is just fairly inaccessible and not that friendly for folks that need mobility help. Otherwise, if you're used to using a metro system, I found the Paris Metro system to be very intuitive. All of the lines have corresponding numbers or letters and colors, and then if you are in a station with multiple lines, the diverging lines are very well marked. If you don't know a lick of French, something you probably do want to know is sortie means exit. So when you're navigating around, if you're trying to get out of the metro station, look for the sortie signs. And like I mentioned a moment ago, a lot of the larger stations have multiple exits, so you can go ahead and pause, look at the map on the wall for a little bit to find the exit that's closest to your destination. And like many metro systems, some stations are linked underground. This is true in Washington, D.C. as well, my home public transit system, where you can take the red line, for example, get off at a station, then transfer it to the blue line or the green line or similar. The Paris Metro system, again, makes this very easy. There's a lot of great signage throughout. I will just say, though, that the transfers between stations can be quite long. In DC, when you're transferring, you're often only walking a couple of minutes max. It's usually just changing platform levels. In Paris, sometimes you are walking underground for what seemed like 5 or 6, maybe even more blocks. I would definitely say some of those walks were a half mile. It would take 10 to 15 minutes to transfer between stations, so it's not instant. Once you've identified the train you want to take, getting in the station is very simple. If you have a single-use ticket, you're going to insert it, it will slide through and you'll pick it up on the way out. Or if you have a pass like I do, you're just going to tap it. Then you simply walk through. If you have a pass, obviously retain that, but even if you have a single-use ticket, definitely keep that on your person. And keep it until you are fully out of the train station onto the streets of Paris or wherever you're going. Authorities do conduct random checks between where you would get off the train and where you would exit a station. So there will be a bunch of them lined up and you have to prove that you paid. If you have a single-use ticket, you simply show them that. If you have a pass, they're going to tap your pass to a device to see where you traveled and then confirm that the picture matches your face. Big point being, especially for those of you who get single-use tickets, you've got to pick it up and keep it on your person. If there is a random check, that's the only way to make sure you don't get a fine. To exit, for the most part, you just walk through. Most of them are automatic. You keep walking and the doors will open. In Washington, D.C., you have to tap both on the way into the station and on the way out of the station. I didn't find that to be true in Paris. For Paris, we just tapped on the way in and then you simply exited. And if you have the time, try to appreciate some of the stations. Many of them have really cool themes and I enjoyed looking at them. For the trains themselves, it's worth noting that not all of them have air conditioning. That can be pretty brutal in the summer months, and again, it's very crowded, so a lot of sweaty human bodies in there. Generally speaking, trains with air conditioning are noted on the Bonjour RATP app, another reason to get the app. And if there wasn't air conditioning, there typically was a little half window that could be open, but it didn't always provide much relief. I was in Paris during August for what it's worth, and it was very hot, and especially hot during transit times. When you're on the train, once you get to the stop you're trying to get off at, note that the operation of the doors to leave the train varies. Some of those doors just open automatically. This is how it is in Washington, D.C., so you just walk off the train. But some trains instead have manual components. Some will have a little square green button that you have to push to open the doors to leave the train. Others have handles that you have to kind of turn. That will open the door to leave the train. If you're feeling unsure or anxious about this, if you're going more than one stop, I always just try to position myself so I could see the door and watch other patrons leave on stops prior to mine, so then I would know what to do. And pay attention while you're on the train to make sure you don't miss your stop. The line maps inside the train cars also varies. On some trains there was just a printed map of the line and route you were on, so you certainly could follow along, but nothing was actively really prompting you to get off the train necessarily. Other trains that seemed a little bit more modern had a cool map where there would be a light at the station that we were arriving at, so then you could follow that along to see when you needed to get off, when your station was lighting up. Overall, when you are riding the trains, if you are aware of your surroundings and paying attention to what's going on and what stops you're passing, etc., I don't think navigating the Paris metro system is going to be a problem for you at all. And while I focused on the more standard trains here, we did also use the RER-A and RER-B lines. These are more commuter trains that go longer distances. They're slightly different, but overall it is the same general procedure. We took that RER-A train from Paris itself out to Disneyland Paris. If you have any interest in Disneyland Paris content, please check out my other channel, Pixie Dust PhD. That's a Disney focused channel, and there is Disneyland Paris content up there, as well as other Disney topics. If you have questions about navigating the Paris metro system, please leave those in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to get back to you and help you out. Generally speaking though, the Paris metro system is fairly intuitive. I hope this helped your anxiety, and may you have a great rest of your day.